Hey everybody, how you doing? All right, check it out. All right, so I just completed Continental Divide Trail, June 2025. I went with my wife and my dad. We had separate rigs. My wife and I went in my truck, and my dad went in his Jeep Wrangler. I want to kind of talk about some of the things that we went through. I took some notes along the way, and I just want to discuss them, just in case anybody has, uh, the ambition to do something like this. Just going to drop you some knowledge or whatever about it, what I experienced, what we went through, some of the trials and tribulations. So I took some videos. I'll share those with y'all as well, some pictures and stuff like that. Made some slideshows, and I'll post all that stuff. But first, I'm going to talk about what the journey was, how we planned for it, and stuff like that. So um, we started pre-planning about 2 years ago. Really, it took me about 2 years to do this one. The first time I did this, I did the Trans-American Trail, and I only planned for like about a year on that one, and I wish I did a little bit longer to iron out some of the details. And even though I did 2 year planning on this, still there's some things that I left out that I wish I can do over again. But it is what it is, and you learn every time you do it. So let me go ahead and get started with this, right? So for pre-planning, you gotta look at your maps. So first thing we did was look at maps and navigation stuff. And the first thing I did was reach out to Overland Bound. They have an app, and that's how really I heard about it, was through their app. And it's just trails and things like that, just like every other kind of overlanding app out there. But these guys here, I think their name is Mike and Kent, I think it is, or something like that, Mike and Kent. They had already done the Continental Divide Trail, and they basically laid the groundwork for it. And I contacted those guys, and they said they can give me the tracks for free. So to me, that's a no-brainer, right? So they sent me the tracks. So thank you to those guys for doing that. Appreciate y'all on Overland Bound. The track was good. It was solid. They pre-plotted a lot of stuff on there already, which was great, and it was useful information. So a lot of their stops that they used, a lot of the camp places they were at, they pre-plotted all those areas, even the places they didn't camp, just where there was camping in general, they posted it on there. So all that was really, really helpful. Serviced areas, they plotted those on there as well. That came in handy. So when they sent me those tracks, what I did was I opened up I have a Gaia. I use Gaia for all my overland adventures and whatnot. So I just downloaded the track to my Gaia map and created an overlay for it. And then once I had the overlay set up on my Gaia map, what I did was I took sections of that map throughout the trail, and I downloaded sections of it to create a hard version map of it, and I saved those to my MacBook Pro. And I use those basically so I can, as you're traveling down your trip, right, you can open up your individual maps and you can see where service stations are in relation to where you are. Because sometimes, actually a lot of times, your Gaia map really isn't, you don't really see a whole lot on there because there's just no internet connection out there. And all you get is a white screen and a blue line or whatever color line your trail is. So it worked really well since I can download sections of that map and just save them to my MacBook. So I use my Gaia maps with the overlay on it. All right, so that was my main source of navigation was that. And I also brought an atlas with me, a U.S. Forestry atlas. So because I knew a lot of this trail was through U.S. forestry areas, so that comes in handy too, because you're going through these forestry roads. A lot of times sometimes they're going to be, I don't say a lot, but sometimes those roads are closed due to certain situations, or whatever. And by using that U.S. forestry map, you can open up that atlas and you can see your roads, and you can just go ahead and navigate around those different areas. Makes it really easy to do. So again, that's my Gaia app, U.S. forestry maps, the downloaded sections of the map. And then what I did was I also took that overlay that I had on my Gaia app and I transferred it to Google Earth. And the reason why I did that was because even though I knew internet connection was not going to be good, I wanted to have it because when I was in an area that had internet connection, I'd just be able to open that up and I can get a better beat on my trail and what was going on, right? So it helped for that, right? Because Gaia, right? I mean, it's good, right? It's a great application. I like it. But sometimes it doesn't really show like the actual terrain of the road. Because once you get your map set up the way you want it, like going back and redoing it and recalibrating it and whatever, it's a pain in the butt, right? So I set my maps the way I wanted them on Gaia, and then I transferred that overlay to Google Earth, and now when I get into an area that does have internet connection, I can go ahead and explode that map open, and I can look at my trail. And I can see, if it's got dirt road, if it's got, if it's going through a mountain pass or desert or whatever, right? I can just get a really good beat on that trail. So it was real helpful for that. So I used 4 different types of navigation. In between all 4, you get a good idea of what you're getting into. So that was my mapping situation that I used for navigation purposes. Again, that was Gaia app, U.S. Forestry Atlases, overlay on Google Earth, and then I downloaded sections of that Gaia map. And all 4 of those were really beneficial. And I tell you, man, like I used all 4 of them, right? So, the more you have, the better, right? As far as that's concerned, in my opinion. Let's see. So Gaia, let's talk about Gaia for a little bit because, and I'm sure probably any of the apps out there that you use for overlanding, I'm sure they're probably all pretty similar as Onyx Off-Road or whatever. There's a bunch of them out there, right? I don't feel like paying for multiple subscriptions to multiple different things. So I have one Gaia, that's it. But it's great until it isn't, right? And what do I mean by that? It's glitchy, man. Like Gaia is glitchy. And I don't know if it's just the issue I had with it. My dad had the same issue. It was glitchy on him as well. So there was times where it just kind of froze and you're kind of like, well, my map froze. I need to pull over. So, you just radio your dude in front of you like, hey, look, my map's froze on me. I need to pull over. So you pull over and you unplug your phone or wherever you have your maps onto, and you reset everything, and then you plug it back in, and hopefully it comes back up again, right? So you kind of got to do that a few times to play around with it. Sometimes it takes longer than others to get going again, and it's just what it is. So that's what I mean by Gaia is kind of glitchy. But again, it's a great application. I use it with little to no problems. I say no problems, but little to no problems. Every now and again, it just freezes up on you, and you just gotta, reset it. No big deal. But you're gonna have issues like that, right, along the way. You're just gonna have to recalibrate and carry on, right? So there's that. U.S. Forestry Maps. The reason why I had that book, like I mentioned, you're going to come across some forestry roads sometimes that might be locked down due to different situations. So, for example, we're rolling through one of the national forests, whatever, and we get to a gate and it was locked, had a lock on it. So, meaning you can't go through if it's got an actual lock, right? And you don't go around or try and cut the lock. It's closed, right? So if you come across a gate like that has an actual lock on it, right? Typically at the U.S. Forestry, they're gonna say why it's locked down, and a sign on it. Says something about this trail, road secure due to I think this one was because of grizzly bears. They were in mating season or whatever. I don't know what was going on with them really, but it just said due to protected habitat, grizzly bears are in the area, so they just locked the area down, right? So you're going to have situations that occur, and that forestry map is going to help you get through those areas, those national forests, because it shows all the logging roads. In your Gaia app, for whatever reason, really doesn't work in U.S. forestry roads. Those are usually out areas where there's no service. So you have that backup map, right, that you can utilize to get around those areas. So it worked out great. The downloaded maps, the reason why I did that was because, as I mentioned, the guys who put the trail together have pre-plotted areas on there for like camping and stores. And what I did was I printed those sections out that have those stops and those campgrounds on them. So when you discuss your route, right, you're doing route planning, you can look ahead and say, okay, look, for tomorrow, there's these campsites that are in these areas. This is where we're going to look at staying, right? And then, along that path, there's these cities that we can stop at for stores if we need to get more ice, or if we need to get gas, or if we need to top up on water or whatever, right? Those saved download maps help with that. So that's why I had the multiple different things like that, right? So that's my mapping situation that I used, right? And it all worked out good. I'm back. So there's that. So the gear, right? Let's talk about gear. What did I bring? That's always the big question. Like, what do you bring on these things? So we were gone a month, man. So, right, we left June 9th and we finished it on June 22nd, right? Not really a month, but we'll just call it a month. Made a pretty detailed list about everything that we had. We did spreadsheets. So I did an Excel spreadsheet on everything that I was bringing, and my dad did the same thing, made an Excel spreadsheet and listed everything he's bringing, and went cross-referenced those two Excel spreadsheets. We made columns on the top, for different categories, camping, gear, like miscellaneous gear, or recovery gear, camp supplies, kitchen equipment, things like that, right? Tools. And once you cross-reference that stuff, you see you have multiple items that are the same. You say, all right, look, dude, are you going to bring it? I'm going to bring it, right? And then, that's how you kind of cut down on weight. The more things you bring, the heavier you're going to be, right? And the heavier you are, the harder it is in your vehicle, more gas you use. It's just extra wear and tear. So you want to kind of travel with the necessities, the things that you absolutely need. So the tools I brought with me were specific to, working on my Jeep. And that's what I brought, tools that work on my Jeep, nothing more, right? I brought an impact wrench as well. You never know you need impact wrenches. They're always just good to have. I brought a chainsaw, brought a sawzall, and those are for just cutting down trees if your path is blocked by a down tree, which seems to always happen. There's always a down tree somewhere, right? So I got video or pictures or something of us cutting a tree out of a trail. It's just going to happen. So be prepared for that. So make sure you have some kind of, equipment where you can cut trees. You're going to need it. We brought spare batteries because all of our stuff is cordless. So it means you brought chargers as well that go along with it. Wrenches, all the wrenches I need to work on my Jeep if something happens to it. Recovery gear. I know a lot of people like talking about recovery gear. And I'll be honest with you, for recovery gear, it's important to bring, without a doubt, 100%. Don't get too far in the weeds with it, though, because there's so much recovery gear out there, and I think that is just, some of it to me is a waste of money. I think it's a money grab, some of it's useful, and some of it's you don't leave without it, right? If you don't have a winch on your truck or your rig, man, you need to put one on there. To me, that's like a no-go item. Like, you need a winch, 100% need a winch. I used it twice on on this trip. The winch my dad had some stuff. So, you know, if you're going to use anything, it's probably going to be a winch. So make sure you have a winch on your rig. I see people on the trail that don't have a winch, and they rely on like tow straps or bubba ropes and things like that, or traction boards. I mean, sure, all that stuff works, but I just don't see the need in traction boards if you got a winch. In my personal opinion, a winch is going to get you out of a lot of stuff. But with that being said, I did have tree savers. I had shackles. I had things like that. All the basic recovery gear items I had. Right, I didn't go over and beyond. I didn't have all that extra. I had the basic recovery gear kit that you would need. I didn't need any of it, thankfully. The only thing I needed was my winch. That was it, right? The funny part about all that, though, is my dad did get a flat on the trail. So, not that that's funny, but it's funny because we talk about all the gear and all the tools we bring. There's one thing that, with all that stuff that we had, being prepared, we can literally, the tools we had, we can break a Jeep down and rebuild it again, to include the engine, right? But we didn't have, he didn't have the key to his wheel locks. So if you get a flat tire, you're kind of out of luck. You can't change it, right? Because you need that wheel lock key to get that lock off. I run lugs on mine. I don't have wheel locks on it. So lesson learned from him now. He doesn't have wheel locks on his either. He just runs straight lugs as well. And look, the way I look at it is like this. Look, let me be honest about it. I got a 3-inch lift on my truck. I got 37-inch tires. So tire and wheel weight, probably looking about 150 pounds per tire. Man, if someone could come around and jack my truck up and take the tires off, all 4 plus a spare, look, man, they're yours. Not that that's a test. I'm not daring anybody to do it. I'm just saying the likelihood of someone actually stealing my tires is probably slim to nil, right? If I'm being honest about it. I've never had someone tamper with my truck in that way. They'll probably break a window out and steal something from the inside before they take my tires. So I just don't see the point in wheel locks, personally. Not a little sports car. What I will say is this, though, what I wish we had, and I'm kind of pissed I didn't have it, was off-road jack, right? You gotta have an off-road jack, and I know better, but I was gonna pack my floor jack. It's a 2-ton floor jack. I was gonna pack it, and I didn't. I probably should have, but it wouldn't have done us any good anyway because my dad couldn't get the tire off because he didn't have a wheel lock. He didn't have a key for it. So, but I mean, whatever, right? It's all good. But if you do need to work on your vehicle, it's nice to be able to jack it up and get up underneath there. But I don't need to jack my truck up. It's 3.5 inches off the ground, so I can just work on it. Unless I need to get the tires off, I got it. All right, look, you can go all day about this. Ball joints and stuff like that, whatever, right? So, but it's all good. It all came out fine. So I do wish I had an off-road jack, though. If I'm being completely honest with you, I wish I had an off-road jack that I brought with me. I think it made things a little bit easier. So there's that. Let's see. Weather gear. You can get carried away with gear. You really can. Like, all kidding aside, right? We talk about all that and we laugh about it, but you can get carried away with gear. The more gear you bring, the heavier your truck's going to be, or your rig, and that's just going to weigh you down. And then with that comes, your back end starts to sag a little bit. You start losing clearance. You're gonna need clearance on these trails. So it's kind of give and take. When you're evaluating your gear you bring, really pay attention to what you need or what you want. Right? Needs are different than wants. So just pay attention to that and bring the necessities. Bring things that are necessary. If you break down and you can do a trail fix, right? So that's really what you're paying attention to is what tools do I need? What do I have to have? What gear do I have to have? If you don't absolutely need it, then don't bring it, right? Like a blow dryer. You laugh, but you know who I'm talking to. So there's that, okay? And then you have to worry about, trash, right? So, you're going to create rubbish. So what you pack in, you pack out, right? So I got a big dry bag, those big dry bag trash bags. What I'm talking about? You fit over a spare tire, right? So I had one of those, even though I don't have a spare tire in my Jeep, because I got a truck. So I hung it off my rooftop tent, called it good. Worked out nice. Put a plastic bag inside of it, dumped all our trash in there, kept it safe, kept it clean. And then at night, right, if we're camping, that bag goes inside the bed of my truck. It doesn't stay outside. And that's because, you're traveling through bear country. So, you just want to pack all that stuff away, or you take that bag and you head it downwind and you hang it on a tree downwind somewhere. Either way works, right? Good to go. You just got to understand that you are in bear country and you're going to attract animals. Right, just be aware. That's all. We had for storage for food. I had 2 ice chests. I had a 75 quart and a 45 quart. My 75 quart is a Orca, and my 45 quart is a Yeti. Right. My dad had a 75 quart Coleman. Right. That looks like all the other exploded type style ice chests out there. They all work. They're all good. I'm not advocating for one or the other. I'm just simply saying what I have. Worked out good. The 75 quart held on my cold gear, and my 45 quart held on my dry goods. And I did that because, again, you are in bear country, and you want to ensure that everything, all your food is safe and secure, and you have in a spot that it's protected, and those ice chests fit that need, right? So if you're doing camping, if you're going on these trails, make sure you have a spot that you can stow your dry goods as well as your cold, right? So the ice chest worked out well for me. I also have my air compressor in my Jeep as well. So if you have air, like I said, my dad caught that flat tire, and we just took the air compressor and aired him back up again. You know what I mean? So, which worked out great. Held there until we got to a safe spot, and we're able to get a new tire put on there or get it fixed. What else? Talk about tools, recovery gear, things like that. Food storage. Okay. The other option is, you can have a refrigerator. People have these overland refrigerators, which are cool. Whatever. Again, do you need it? I don't know. I think they hold about a week's worth of food as well. So it's about my chest holds about a week's worth of food. I don't know if there's a big difference, except for your food doesn't really get wet in a refrigerator. But no, all kidding aside, though, you do decide to go with overland refrigerator style for your food. Just ensure you have to have your proper power supply for that. I brought a power supply, but mine was for like my electronics, my drone, my laptop, phone, whatever. My phone's plugged in my Jeep, but whatever, my wife's phone, things like that, right? My hot water system. I got a hot water system, so I needed power for that, so I used it. Um, but when you have a refrigerator, you don't you really have to pay attention to your power supply at that point, because if you don't, you're gonna end up draining your truck, right? It's just harder on your vehicle equipment. Although some people, when they do that, they have their own power supply systems, meaning they have their own battery packs and their own, again, more gear, right? More gear, more gear, more gear. And there's weight involved. So people that do that professionally, right, their rigs are tricked out, and they have refrigerators, and they do real well with it because their rig's specifically made for that. If you're a novice and you're just getting out there, man, ice chests all day long, right? I've done a couple of these things, and I still use ice chests. There's different thoughts of that. So not get too deep into it. Just know, if you do decide to go to a refrigerator, you have to make sure you are smart about it, and you're creating your own power supply for it. You're not relying off your rig's power. So, right, just be conscious of it. That's all. Neither one's better or the other. It's just what you prefer, and you'll figure it out what you prefer. Rig configuration. So my rig. We'll go into a little detail about it. Again, I got Badlands Apex winch on the front bumper. It's a great winch. I love it. No issues with it. I've used it. Works great. Right. ARB, air compressor, single tank underneath the hood of my Jeep. Is it the fastest thing in the world? No, but it airs up my tires. It does a good job. I don't have a problem with it. Takes a beating, and it fills my 37-inch tires. To me, that's what's important, right? It fills my tires. So that works, right? And those are both hooked up to my aux switches. Then I got it's about 3.5-inch AEV lift kit put on there with the high capacity springs and the Bilstein shocks, the E100 XPs. Love the lift. It's great, man. Quality product. Zero issues with it at all. It's great lift, right? No joke. I weighted that truck down. I put a lot of gear in there, and it never sagged at all. It still sat at a rake. That's saying a lot, because I got a rooftop tent on it, plus all the gear, right? So I have an extrusion truck bed rack, and on top of that sits my rooftop tent. On the inside, I ripped out the back seats, and I did a seat delete back there. I built myself a seat delete. I didn't buy one, I built it. They're not difficult to do. If you are handy with a tool, and you work on your truck already, you can build one, and it's simple. There's plenty of them online you can look at. I think I videotaped myself doing part of it. I don't know how in detail I went, but I got something out there. I'll post it up, whatever, just to show you what it looked like. But I saved myself a ton of space with it. A ton of space, right? So the last time I did this, my dad and I, we did the Trans-American Trail, and I left my back seats in, and I'm tell you what, when I hit the trail, I instantly regretted it. I wish I pulled them out. I was going to, and I just decided not to. And when I got back from that trip, I was like, next time I do this, them seats are gone. Ripped them out, and again, like I said, created a seat delete back there, and it worked out great. Loved it. Created a ton of space. So if you're contemplating it, and you're like, iffy about it, man, just rip them out. You won't regret it. You'll save your back seats. You'll save your interior, and you're going to protect your equipment better. So just take them out, right? If they're easy to take out, they're easy to put back in. All right. So enough of that. So the inside of my Jeep, on that seat delete, I had the two ice chests, the 45 and 75 quart. I had another Pelican style case back there with all my tools in it. So all my wrenches and my drills, my ink pack, my sawzall, batteries, battery chargers, all that went inside that, right? Tools stay with tools. Then I put in there my Goal Zeros in there, so my power supply was in there, all of our clothes, all of our camping, like bedding, right? Pillows, stuff like that was in there. Anything that I thought could get wet that I didn't want wet was inside my truck, right? So that's kind of how I played that one. Things that I didn't mind if it got wet went inside the bed of the truck. So inside the bed, I had a table, I had a propane tank, I had a mosquito tent, I had my kitchen kit, I had my camping kit, I had a little ladder in there, like step stool style ladder, right? Because my Jeep is high, I'm short, so get that rooftop tent down on a lifted Jeep makes it easy. With the little step stool, it's mostly for my wife. I climbed up on the tires and just do what I do, but for her it helps, right? So really put that step stool style ladder in there for her. My water, I had two 7-gallon containers of water. One was feed water, one was potable water. Stuck those in the back of there. Bunch of other miscellaneous type items that really didn't mind getting wet if it got to that point. I do have a tonneau cover, and I put another table on top of that, a roll-up table that I got from Cabela's. Worked out great. Just strapped it down to the tonneau cover. It's a hard cover. I strapped it down. Those things aren't waterproof, right? So don't go and ask me if water seeps through. Yes, it seeps through. It's not a whole lot, but it seeps. You know what I mean? It's not perfect, right? And plus, I modified mine a little bit because I got that rack on there, so I had to modify that thing, and I cut it in some spots, and then kind of fill it, whatever. But anyway, so it leaks a little bit, right? So you're gonna get water in there. So whatever you want to bring that you don't want to get wet, don't put back there, because chances are it'll get wet. And if it doesn't get wet, it's gonna get dusty and dirty, right? So there's that, because your truck bed is not sealed, right? So dirt's gonna get in there. All right. So that's kind of my reconfiguration, right? What I did. And then on top of that, right? My dad, he's got a Jeep Wrangler. It's the hybrid, right? So it's a 4-door, and he built a kitchen in the back of his Jeep, right? Which is MDF board. It was heavy, so he had a lot of stuff back there. But my point is, he was running out of space, right? So he gave me a call. He's like, "Hey, Len," he's like, "check it out, man." He's like, "I need to get my rooftop tent on my Jeep." He goes, so I bought a Gobi rack. He goes, "I need help installing it." I was all right, cool. So I flew out to California and helped him put his Gobi rack on, put his rooftop tent on his Jeep, helped him with all that stuff. And then, as we're looking at his Jeep, I was like, "Hey, Dad," he said, I showed him a video of me taking out my back seats and making that seat delete. And he's like, "Wow." He's like, "I don't think I can take the seats out of mine." He's going to go to EV. I was like, "Well," it's like, "It's got nuts and bolts, man." I said, "It can come out." So I went and I looked at it and kind of played around with it for a little bit. And I was like, "Yes, I think we can pull these things out." So we ripped the back seats of his out as well. Took the carpets out, took the back seats out, made a seat delete for him back there, and bought him a ton of space. So he was able to put a ton of stuff back there now. And it worked out great, right? So I bought him some space. And then, I flew back home, whatever, right? So that was all good, right? the object is to make as much room as possible to bring the necessary items to be successful in your trip, right? So that's what you do. Next thing is like sleeping arrangements. Find out what you can do for sleeping, right? People do ground tents, people do rooftop tents. You can pull a trailer, right? You can do whatever you want to do. I don't advise. Eventually, right, for short-term camping, I'm going to get a trailer, right? I'm going to go ahead and get an M1101 Army trailer, and I'm gonna fit it out for a rooftop tent. And I'm just going to spec it out the way I want, right? So I'm going to get, those trailers got big tires on them. They got 37-inch tires, got surge brakes, pintle hooks on them. They're built for off-road. I was thinking about buying one and refitting it for this trip. But then the more I thought about it, I said, well, talked to my wife, and she's like, what do you want? And I was like, I don't know, babe. I said, because, if we bring that trailer, I said, now I got another set of axles I got to worry about. So I got to worry about my rig and the safety of my rig, plus now a trailer, right? I said, I'd rather just keep things compact. I said, and when we do our small little camp trips, I said, we can do that instead. And she's like, okay, cool. So that's what I did. That's why I didn't go ahead and do a trailer or pull behind of any sort, because I just don't want to have to worry about extra tires and extra axles, right? I already have plenty of stuff to worry about on my own rig and make sure that I keep safe. So I wanted to keep it tight, right? So we opted against it. When I did the Trans-American Trail, we stayed in swag tents, and swag tents are great. Love them, right? But there's your pros and cons to ground tents and to rooftop tents. And some of those cons that you have with ground tents, sometimes the sleeping arrangements aren't great, right? You're sleeping on rocks, tree roots. Even though you have a mat in there or a pad of some sort, those things find their way to your back, and it's just not the most comfortable sleep. And when you've been driving for long periods of time, you just kind of want to get the best night's sleep possible. So sometimes ground tenting just doesn't allow for that, right? So, and then, you got weather to worry about. Not that weather doesn't affect you because you're in a rooftop tent. It still does, but just in a different way, right? So ground tent, you got to worry about flooding out. And I knew the areas we were going through are prone to monsoon season. So you can get some really bad rains, some really bad flooding out there. And I just didn't want to have to deal with the flooding, to be quite honest. So we chose to keep the rooftop tent and do that. Then you worry about staking in with the ground tents. Sometimes the ground's just too hard or too compact or just too rocky or too much tree root to really have to be able to stake in, which causes another issue, right? So if it's mild rain, you can you dig your moat around your tent and call it good, and that diverts most of the water, and that can alleviate a lot of stuff. Rooftop tent, people complain sometimes you need leveling blocks for your Jeep because your Jeep's not even, right, and you're sleeping kind of weird angles. I'll be honest with you, I never had that issue at all with my Jeep. I put it on Overland map, the off-road maps, and I found the pitch and roll, and I just kind of went around the area where we're going to camp on the public land and found a spot that I was happy with, right? Was it perfect? No, but I mean, it's never going to be perfect, right? So, if I had a pitch and roll of 0 and 1 or 1 and 2 or 2 and 2 and 1 and 1 or whatever, right? Those degrees are so negligible. It's not a big deal. You're not high enough in the air where 1 or 2 degrees is going to make you sleep at some kind of crazy angle. It's just, so that was fine. I didn't have to really worry about being at some kind of crazy angle. And if I was at a 1 and 2 or something like that for pitch and roll, I just made sure my head was higher than my feet when I parked it and called it good. And in a rooftop tent, to be honest with you, it's like you can get inside there and lay down one direction, be like, hey, you know what? I think I'm gonna try this direction. You turn around and lay that direction, and you're like, oh, this is better. So you lay that direction. So, it's easy, right? So the things you do have to worry about, though, if to be honest, is stuff like high winds, um, and pelting rain, hail, right? Not that that doesn't affect you on the ground either, but more so in the when you're 6 to 8 feet in the air, right? You got these high winds coming, and they're literally just beating you with those winds, and your tent's just rocking and rolling, and then it starts to rain, and then that rain is just driving into your tent, just driving all night long, and eventually your tent gets so saturated that it loses its waterproofing, and you get some seepage. So, right, but the alternative is if you're underground, you're probably getting flooded out. So, right, so they're both, you're not going to be perfect either way. You're going to have your issues, right? And some tents are better at keeping you dry than others. My tent is older than my dad's, and I remember when I first got it, I didn't have an issue with waterproofing, so I probably should have went and resprayed it again for this trip, and I didn't. His tent didn't seep at all. He was fine with his, but mine got saturated to the point where I had seepage. So, it is what it is. No big deal. You just keep moving, right? So when your tent does get like that, you guys got to make preparations to air it out and let it dry, and that's what you do. Although you do plan to disperse as much as possible for camping, you want to find land that's public land and camp and do that. There's going to be certain times possibly you might want to plan for where you may not be able to camp, right? So you might have to find a hard structure somewhere and get a a dime, a really cheap motel or something like that, right? Is what I'm trying to say. Just because the weather just may not permit, and it's really what you're comfortable with and what you're comfortable tolerating. Um, for me by myself, I'm good, right? Like it doesn't nothing really phases me as far as that concerns. But I have my wife with me. I gotta make sure she's safe and she's comfortable too. So if she doesn't feel safe or feel comfortable, then you just gotta pivot, right? So and she's like, hey babe, I don't feel safe out here because there's lightning striking all around us and we're 6 feet in the air or 7 feet in the air. I can't blame her for being scared. You know what I mean? It's like you're in the middle of a forest or open field and you're the only thing there. There's a high rate of possibility you might get hit, right? So you play it safe and you go and find some place else to camp, right? So you maybe get a hotel or something like that. So just kind of be prepared for emergencies like that, right? Because if you think you're going to be able to camp on dispersed camping the whole time, you might not be able to. That's all I'm trying to say, right? So just be prepared, right, to find other accommodations, right? So the weather will sometimes dictate that, or other things maybe. I don't know. Maybe your tent gets jacked up, right? Maybe something like that happens. Maybe you might want to bring a spare tent. I don't know. I never really thought about that till just now. I never thought my tent would get jacked up to the point where I needed another tent, but it might. What if I don't know, you're setting it up and it gets punctured, or I don't know, something happens to it. A million things could happen, right? So just you can never be completely prepared for everything, right? So just understand that sometimes your sleeping arrangements that you're making may divert, and you might have to get a hard structure somewhere, right? So just keep that in mind. So the weather, I think, was a big one, right? It's a big factor in a lot of things. And you can plan for weather as much as you possibly can. So what I did was, before we left, I looked at the month of June, at the weather, at the different areas we're going to be, and I try to kind of forecast where we'd be at certain points of the trip. And I wrote it in a journal and said, okay, this is what the weather's looking like in these cities, right? Or these areas or these national parks or these you know national forests or whatever, right? I kind of jotted that information down. But weather is not a science, and it's going to change on you. So, and it does, right? So you're going through New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and up to Canada. A lot of these places are above 10,000 feet, and it creates its own weather system in a lot of these areas. So just because it's saying it's sunny and 70 here, you might be 13,000 feet up, and there's something completely different going on up there. So you just kind of gotta understand that the weather is not going to be perfect, right? And with the limited amount of access to internet that you have, it's very hard to get a bead on what kind of weather you're going to have. So weather is a major problem when you're doing these trails. You do the best you can with the planning of it, and try and stay ahead of it as much as possible. Really, that's all you can do. There were multiple passes that we couldn't get through because they were snowed in still. So we make it up to the summit, and we had to turn around and come back again because it was just snowed in, and you're not getting through. Which it sucked, but it's part of the journey, and things like that are going to happen. But when stuff like that happens, that's why you have alternate maps as well, because you can navigate around stuff like that, right? So there's 3 passes off the top of my head: Stony Mountain Pass, Mosquito Pass, and Engineer Pass, right? Those are the 3 major passes that we're going to be heading through. Stony Mountain Pass, FYI, is a great pass. Jeep, listen up. You need to make it a Jeep badge of honor because it's a fun trail. So, and there's a lot of dumb trails you have on there that are badges of honor. And this one wasn't dumb. So, it's a cool trail. Make it a badge of honor trail. So Stony Mountain Pass was cool. It's a fun trail to do. We make it up to the summit, and like I said, we had to turn around and come back. Mosquito Pass was pretty bad. A lot of these passes, right? You can probably go. I know Engineer Pass. You can go online and you can research Engineer Pass and find out the days of that they're closed or when they're going to reopen again. I didn't do that for whatever reason. I don't know. It escaped my mind to do that. I was focused on other things. So it was a fail on my part. But you can go and you can research these in more in detail, the passes themselves, and find out what the weather conditions are in those areas. And you can find out if it's snowed in or not, and it'll save you a lot of time and hassle of getting up there and having to turn back around again and wasting like a half a day because you just spent all day going up and realizing you can't make it through. So go ahead and research that a little more and know where you're going, right? And then determine what's at elevation. So 10,000 or above, in my opinion, is at elevation, right? So you want to go ahead and get those pinned down and then research those areas and find out if they're passable or not during the time frame that you're going to be there. Even like we got to Glacier National Park, and even Glacier, like it was fine, right? But the day we got there, they had a snowstorm, and we couldn't do parts of Glacier National Park because it got snowed in that day we got there. So I mean that's the stuff I'm talking about, right? But Glacier National Park, they have like live cams, and you can see the passes through live cam on Glacier National Park, which is kind of cool. You type in the pass you want to go through, and it has a live cam right there, and you can go ahead and check it out on live cam. Engineer Pass doesn't have that, neither does Stony Mountain or Mosquito Pass. They don't have any of that stuff, but they are popular enough passes that you can research them on the internet and find out, what's available to you, or if they're a no-go or go item. All right, let's see. Where's our weather? Okay. All right, so enough of weather. I think y'all can understand what I'm talking about with weather, right? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and let's talk about the trail itself, right? I know you want to hear about that, so let's talk about the trail. All right, so the trail starts at Crazy Cook Monument on the border of Mexico and New Mexico. It's a little shady of an area. There's real no fence that delineates the two borders right there. It's kind of just like really a stick fence right there. It's not going to hold anybody back from anything. It's a shoddy little spot. So I don't recommend camping there to start the journey. I came in from Virginia. My dad came from California. We found a spot that made sense to us, which was Lordsburg, New Mexico. So we stayed in Lordsburg at some Five and Dime out there, rundown motel, and was that? Why didn't we camp? Good question, man. Why didn't we camp? We didn't camp because the first day you start your journey, you want to make sure you do a gear check, right? Go over your maps, go over your gear, talk it out, know what the expectations of the trail are, know what your expectations of each other are, where your rules are, what you're going to be doing, communications, test all that stuff out, and just make sure everything's working properly. Go over your rig, make sure your rig's good to go, torque down anything needs to torque down, whatever you just need to do, that's the time to do it, right? So that's why we don't really camp the day before. We just want to make sure everything's tight and ready to rock, right, for the next day. It's a good question. So we stayed in Lordsburg, and we held up at a Five and Dime out there, and we did our gear check and talked about things, again, all the expectations, what we're going to be doing. Next morning, we woke up, we had breakfast, and we had to travel all the way down to Crazy Cook, right, which is 2 hours. And then when you get down there, you travel back the same exact way because it's one way in and one way out. There's not a multiple route. There's no multiple routes to do on that trail. It's the same road you take in to get to Crazy Cook is the same road you're taking out to get to Crazy Cook, which is kind of annoying because you're wasting an extra 2 hours going on the same trail you just did. To me, that's a little frustrating, but it's part of the journey and it's part of the trail. If there's a better way of doing it, then by all means do it. I guess the alternate of that would be is you don't drive down to Crazy Cook and you just start at Lordsburg and you go from there. Because when you're coming back from Crazy Cook, you have to drive through Lordsburg. That's part of the trail. So we actually stayed on part of the trail in a hotel, right? So I don't know if there's any better way of doing it, like I said, unless you just start from Lordsburg and call it good and don't go down the monument. But we really wanted to do the monument because it's got the marker down there and wanted to take pictures and do the whole thing, right? So we did, and the trail's fun to drive. It's a good trail. It's pretty cool. It's not strenuous or anything, but it's just a fun trail to drive. So, whatever. You double back. You waste 2 hours, but you're on a month journey, so what's 2 hours in a month, right? It's not a big deal. You just kind of do it. So the trail is straightforward. It's not a difficult trail. The whole trail, I'm talking in general, it's not a difficult trail. It's pretty easy. A novice, I believe, can do it. Just don't do it by yourself, right? Be smart. Take a buddy. Do you need a high clearance vehicle? Yeah, you do. You need a high clearance vehicle. There's some spots where, if you don't, you're going to probably get hung up. Do you need a crazy off-road rig? No, you don't need some crazy off-road rig. Even my rig was overbuilt for it, to be honest with you. But I'd rather, you know, I take my rig on other harder stuff as well. So, um, you know, basically what I'm just trying to say is it's not an expert level trail, right? It's not a level 5. It's not red roads, right? You're you have nothing to worry about. It's pretty straightforward. 90% of the roads are dirt, gravel roads, utility roads, fire roads, logging roads, things like that. There's some spots where you have to drop it into 4 high. We went to 4 low a couple times. Really didn't need to go to 4 low. I did have a bunch of caution, just because I wasn't too sure of the roads. It looked like it was getting sketchy, and I was like, you know what, better be safe than sorry. I'm just gonna drop it in 4 low. We're just gonna go. We're gonna cross slowly through this area, and get through it, and then we'll pull out and then drop it down to 4 high again, whatever. So that's what we did. There's only 2 real times that I actually needed to go to 4 low, and that was to pull my dad out of a couple situations that he got himself into. Um, and really, it wasn't that his Jeep wasn't capable of doing it. He's a novice. He doesn't have a whole lot of experience doing it, and no shame, right? He's just operator error, right? So we went and I pulled him out of the 2 situations he got himself into, and we called it good. A lot of his problem was he didn't air his tires down enough, right? And when you're off-roading, right, you gotta take some air out, right? But he was weighted down quite a bit, and any air he takes out of his tire, he loses ground clearance, and he didn't want to sacrifice him a ground clearance, so he made the determination he was going to just keep his tires as they were, which is his call, right? But that's also why he got a flat and busted 2 valve stems, right? So there's that. I went him out a couple places, and that's the only, to be quite honest, that's the only time I really needed 4 low was to winch him out of those areas, right? Other than that, I probably really didn't need to go to 4 low ever. Again, I did have abundance of caution because I was not aware of the road situation. It looked like it was getting sketched, so I just dropped it, and I'd rather played it safe than sorry. So, you do what you do, right? No big deal. It really isn't. Not going to hurt anything by going to 4 low, right? So, a lot of the road, like I said, I kept it in 2 high. I know a lot of people that get on dirt roads, whether, they're washboard dirt roads or they're shale roads or, whatever, they put it in 4 high and roll in 4 high because their tires can break ground or whatever, and they would rather have in 4 high to, at abundance of caution, which is fine. You can do that, right? None that says you can't. That's probably, the safest thing to do, and that's the recommended thing to do, to be quite honest with you, right? Your tires leave pavement, you should put in 4 high, right? So I put in 2 high and left it there and called it good, right? But I did disconnect my sway bar in 2 high. That was just to be able to level out those roads. I have a taser in my Jeep, and it allows me to disconnect the sway bar in 2 high. I hit the hot button, and it overrides the whole system, and I can do like 30 miles an hour with the sway bar disconnected on washable roads. It just flattens the road out. It makes it a little smoother to ride. And it's not in my head either, because my wife will make a comment. She'll say, "Hey, babe, did you disconnect the sway bar? Because these roads feel kind of bumpy." And I'd be like, "Oh, no, I forgot." So disconnect it, and we carry on. Right? So that's what I do, right? Everyone's different. Run your rig the way you run it. No harm, no foul, right? As long as you're being safe, you're good, right? So this trail, I will say, was by far the muddiest trail I have ever done with distance like this. It was insane. I have pictures, and you'll see how muddy I got. it just seemed like no matter where we were on that trail, you were going through mud. Um, I, it's just a muddy trail. It's a very, very muddy trail. Um, it's got a lot of water crossings, which is cool. We use those as car washes because it was a muddy trail. And that, I'm telling you, man, that mud gets baked on and it doesn't come off. So we stopped at a couple car washes and we broke it off just to break off some of that dirt, right? And when you do that, make sure you clean those bays out, right? You don't just leave them destroyed. Clean your bay when you're done. But anyway, it was a very, very muddy trail. Let's Yeah. So one of the places that I went my dad out was actually um, a mud pool that he got stuck in. Um, and I just winched him out essentially. But it was funny. Like I went around it and I kept going, and I look in my mirror and I see my dad and I stop. I look at my wife. I'm like, babe, I think my dad's stuck. And she's like, turns around, she looks. She's like, sure. And I was like, yeah, he's not moving. It's like radio. I'm like, hey, Dad, are you stuck? He goes, no, I'm good. I got it. My wife go, yeah, he's stuck. So I turn around on my back and get on my truck and I walk up and I look at his Jeep, and the way he's sitting in this mud pool is because it's an EV. Like all four wheels are still spinning, but real slow and like going nowhere. And I go, hey, Dad. It's like, you stuck, man? He's like, yeah, I'm stuck. I was like, all right, cool. So I drove around, took my shoes and socks off, jumped in the mud puddle, um, hooked up my winch to his Jeep, and I winched him out, right? So it was all fun. It's all good humor, right? It was funny. Pulled him out, called it good. That was it. But so I love my winch, right? Again, don't need traction boards for that stuff, right? Just pull them out with my winch. Good to go, right? When you're traveling down these roads, man, in some of these areas, there's a lot of cool spots, right? That you want to explore and see and do. And I highly, highly encourage you get out and see those areas, man. Plot on your trail where you want to stop and where you want to stay. And take some time in those areas and just really explore what's around you. We planned on staying in Yellowstone, Glacier, Tetons, and then as we came out of all that, we wanted to stay, by Mount Rushmore. Ah, man, it's rough. Talking stuff. So we stayed by Mount Rushmore behind there, and then we stayed in Badlands as well. There's just parts of America that we wanted to see and explore on our own, and we did, right? So, but there's a lot of cool mining towns along the trail that you can stop and explore. Just do your research, do your due diligence, find places that you want to stop and explore, and do that. Don't make this a race. Make it something that you remember, something that you can hold personal to you, and just see what's out there in the world, right? See, the nature and the beauty of it all, and just take some time and explore. So I highly recommend you do that. What made this trail difficult? For all intents and purposes, it wasn't a difficult trail. What made it difficult, though, was the lack of resources and connections to things. What do I mean by that? Trying to get like a internet connection for research was difficult. This trail had almost no internet connection at all anywhere along the route. You were lucky to even get internet or cell service, whatever you want to call it, at a gas station. in some of these towns. Like, it just didn't have it. If I had to put a percentage on it, I'd probably say 5% of the trail we had connection, um, and that was probably a lot, right? There's just not a lot of connection out there, which again makes things difficult because you want to be able to do research when you're traveling. You want to be able to see what's ahead of you. You want to be able to see, different routes and things that may occur along your trail. Even if it's just like searching a town, you know what I mean? Does it have a gas station? Because services are few far between as well. Sometimes, I almost had to tap into my emergency gas, but I didn't. I found a spot, and we got gas. And I'll tell you about that as well. But going back to your internet connection, your cell service, it just helps with trail planning to have something like that. So when I did the Trans-American Trail, right, service was intermittent along the whole entire trail, and I was able to do research along the way and make sure that my trail was still true. And if I needed something, I can readjust or whatever because I had internet service to do that, right? This trail, if I didn't have my maps, I've been done, right? I'd have been stuck because there was nothing else I can do. I needed those maps; they were my lifeline. Because like I said, there's no service. So, I think that made it very difficult, right? First and foremost. Second thing was the lack of services for gas, water, and food. We tried to stop every week for those things. Like I said, my ice chests were great, but I like to bleed off the water because your ice melts, and then just top it off with more ice, and then just replenish some of the food. You only keep about a week's worth of food with you, because you don't want to carry too much because things start to go bad if you carry too much stuff. So you just want to make sure that you're carrying an appropriate amount of food. So you go ahead and want to get more supplies for food, and it's just difficult to do that because there's just not a whole lot of areas to do it. And in water, like I said, I carried 14 gallons of water, 7 waters of feed, 7 waters of potable. Now I will say this about water: feed water is not as important to me as potable water. Feed water is used for showers, right? I have a hot shower system that I carry on board with me, and we use that to take showers. So feed water is not horribly important. Potable water is the most important thing, and I buy my potable water and then fill my tanks with it. Are there alternate methods? Sure, you can use feed water, river water, stream water, and you can use filtering devices to make that potable. Yeah, you can do that. I didn't want to risk dysentery. I just bought my water, right? So whenever I come across a store that sold water, I bought potable water. As far as feed water is concerned, I did use stream water, river water at times for my feed water. Take showers. Is it fishy? Yeah, it smells a little bit, but I mean, look, you got soap, you got, whatever. You're just trying to wash the dirt off, right? So, you get muddy out there. Like I said, this is probably the muddiest trail I've ever done for that stretch of time. So you get dirty quick. So, you don't want to go to bed, with mud all over you, right? So, you take clothes off, jump in the shower quick, and you kind of just rinse off and, get unmuddy, right? So, little life hack, right? If you go to a gas station, typically, and I'm not talking like, these major gas stations. I'm talking like these smaller ones that you find in these backwoods areas. They'll have different options for you for water, right? You just ask them. You go up to the counter and say, "Hey, dude, I need some feed water for my tank. Y'all got anything for me?" and he'll say, yeah, I got a deep sink in the back, you can use it, or I got a hose out back, you can use it. And or he'll say, look, the dude across the street, he's got some stuff over there, you go talk to him, he'll hook you up. All right, cool. So just talk to wherever you are, talk to the person behind the counter, and they'll hook you up. I promise you. They're good people out there on the road. Now I will say this: there is a major gas station, or there's a couple of them really, but you won't find two of the three anywhere you're going. Right? The two are on major roads. But Maverick gas station, man, shout out y'all guys. You're awesome. You saved my bet a couple times out there. So Maverick gas station, what they do is they have a hand water pump by their gas pumps. And all you do is you hand pump that water, and it goes right into your feed tank. It's free. You don't have to worry about it, right? So it's just like I said, it's just a hand pump, like a well hand pump type situation, right? You just pump it, and the water flows out the hand pump, and it goes into your feed tank. The water is actually potable as well. I didn't use it for potable water. I just used it for feed. And again, like I said, I just went inside and I bought potable water. But to each your own. You can do what you want to do. I know if you're not used to drinking that type of water, sometimes you can get sick. So that's kind of why I didn't do it. My system just wasn't built for it. I'm not saying anything bad, just, what I mean? Like people that drink that water on a regular don't have any issues. Just like going to Mexico, right? You drink the water, you probably need the runs, right? So I didn't want to risk that on the road. It makes sense? All right. So, so I just bought my bottled water, and I filled up. Anytime I got to a Maverick gas station, man, it was like money. Just going to that hand pump, feed water's full, good to go. Put it in my truck, call it good. Get gas and go, right? And then after that, it's you really once you figure that little hack out, man, you don't really worry about water again. So was 14 gallons, 7 good? Yeah, I mean, it worked out fine. I didn't have any issues with it. Just pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to how you use your water, and conserve it. Right? You're not out there taking 5-hour showers. Right? These are military showers. Right? You press the handle, you get wet, you soap up, you rinse off. You're done. Right? It's a ship shower. You're done. You're in and out. Right? Literally 30 seconds. You hose off, you soap up, you rinse off, you jump out. Done. So you do it like that, you're going to conserve your potable, or you're going to conserve your feed, and you'll be fine. If you sit there and you're lollygagging in the shower, you're going to blow through it quick, and then you're going to be sorry. Then you'll be using dude wipes to wash yourself, right? So which we did a couple times because we just ran out of sources for water. Just be cognizant of that. Let's see what else. I also had, like I mentioned before, I had 2 gas tanks on me. I netted about, I think they're 3-gallon tanks each, so 6 gallons of gas or whatever, right? Remember I talked about going to Silverton and needing gas, right? So we did that, right? There was a point in the trail where it got to a point where we really needed fuel, and we were on the radios, and my dad and I were talking. We're like saying, "Hey," I'm like, "Dad, look, I'm looking at the maps, and we got some distance to go before we even get civilization again. Like, we're not going to make it to a gas." He carried 2 gallons with him, and I carried 6. I was like, "Look, together, we got like 8 gallons of fuel, right? Yours is hybrid, you can chug 2 gallons down your tank, and I'll take 3, and I'll conserve 3, right? I won't do all 6." I said, "But we need to figure something out, or we're gonna run out of fuel." And he said, "Well, no, I'm not gonna make it." And I'm like, "Look," I said, you might be able to, and I might be able to make it as well. I was like, but like that might mean we're on fumes. I was like, I don't feel comfortable with that. And so we get a break in our transmission, and somebody interrupts. It was like, hey, I can't remember the town. It's some small, like literally 20 people in this town, small, right? She comes on. She's like, hey, we're so and so. We have fuel here if you need it. And I was like, who? I was like, who's this? Come again? Like, repeat your last. Say again. And she's like, yeah, I'm so and so. She goes, where are you? And I was like, well, I see the sign that says so. She goes, oh yeah. She goes, you're right next to it. She goes, turn left into that spot. She goes, and come to this restaurant, bar, hotel thing, and we can get you taken care of for gas if you want. And I was like, oh, cool. So I pulled in, and she goes, she goes, you need gas. She said, I didn't mean to like drop in on y'all's conversation. She goes, but she was, she goes, y'all came across my kid's radio, this toy radio. She goes, and I heard y'all conversation, so I picked it up and, wanted to help you out. And I was like, yeah, I was like, cool. I said, no, I appreciate it, man. I said, don't worry about, dropping in on us. And I was like, but for real, I was like, I probably need put at least 3 gallons in my tank to get me to my next destination. I said, I have emergency gas on my tank, on my truck. I said, I'm kind of saving it. I said, but I would like to get, 3 gallons from you. I was like, how much is it? It's $7 a gallon. I was like, oh. All right, well, put 3 in, I'll give you 21, whatever, right? So I gave her $21. I put 3 gallons in my tank, and my dad opted not to get anything. And that he was really like hard fast on not getting gas, and that was why I chose to get gas, right? Because I figured if I put 3 in mine, at least I knew I can get to where I got to go. And I still had gas for him if he needed it, because I didn't think 2 was enough for him, because even though he had a hybrid, he was actually burning gas faster than I was, which is kind of weird, right? I was getting better gas mileage. So I chose to put 3 in mine and save my 3 for him, even though he had 2 on his truck. I didn't feel confident with that. So I chose to put 3 in mine and pay the $21 to do it. So I did, right? He made it, but he literally came in on fumes. Like, he coasted into the gas station. So I just wasn't comfortable doing that. So, whenever you have the opportunity to get gas, right? Stores are few far between. So just, keep that in mind. All right, going back over the passes again. Stony Mountain Pass, man, look, it's a good pass. I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was good to go. Again, Jeep, make it a badge trail because it's a cool trail. It's fun to drive. I was completely disappointed we couldn't finish it. It's kind of upset, but I mean, it is what it is. Snowpack at the top of the mountain was just too much. We couldn't get through. It was impassable, right? Again, there is Mosquito Pass. Mosquito Pass has some great views. I think I already talked about it, right? Stony Mountain Pass, it's got a lot of water crossings. I already talked about all that stuff, so I won't go back into it again. But what I wanted to talk about was the beavers. The beavers create a lot of those water passes, and you need to be careful with the beaver season, because they build their dams and they block up all the roads with the water. It creates really bad flooding through there. So you just want to be sure that when you do your water crossings, get out of your truck. Just don't go driving through a water puddle because you see one, right? Or a water crossing. Just take your time, get out of your truck, look at the water, make sure the ground's good, make sure it's not, you're, you're getting in some kind of trap where you're gonna get stuck, right? And make sure you feel comfortable doing it first and foremost. And the only way you can really determine that is if you get out and you look at it, right? Look at your obstacle before you go through it. So, um, you know, when we came out of Stony Mountain Pass the next day, one of the guys told us in the small town that we're getting help in that he does a lot of water crossing rescues out there with people's rigs because they think they can go through it and the water's too deep because they're not paying attention and their rigs get flooded out, so they have to get towed out, which is really expensive, right? So, but those are usually caused by beaver dams. They block all the water up and they create flooding on some of those areas. So just be cognizant of that if you're going through it. We saw one beaver dam created some flooding, but it wasn't anything crazy. We were able to get through it with no problem. There's part of the trail where we thought that it wasn't the trail, it was a water crossing, and so we backed out and we kind of drove around a little bit and look, this is the only way we can go. Let's go back and look at it again. So we went back and I climbed to the side of the mountain and I ran around it and kind of looked at it again. And once I got up on the mountain, I could see the exit point to the river to where we had to go through. And I realized that it was a good crossing. So, somebody was like, look, this is where we got to go. Like, this is it right here. You just got follow me, trust me. Like, I'm not sitting here explaining it to you. Just follow me, trust me. So he's like, hey, I got you, man. So we drove through, came out the other side, no big deal, right? So it's got a lot of cool, Stony Mountain Pass got a lot of cool water crossings in it. Again, just be careful crossing them because some of them can be caused by beavers and the flooding could be more than what you think. So just, look at it, right? Mosquito Pass has some great views, man. Beautiful views, great views. You can start getting at elevation. You can see like the gullies or the gulches and the streams and all the rivers that go through there, and it's really, really beautiful views. Just taking in great drone footage going through there. I'll go ahead and make sure I upload some of those. Again, unfortunately, it's impassable. Couldn't make it through, but Mosquito Pass was a beautiful pass. I wish we would have made it through. Typically, every year, what we found out going through there was that there's usually a run that they do, like a marathon run that they do that goes through Mosquito Pass, and they had to cancel it because there's too much snow pack. They couldn't run through it, so they canceled it until further notice. While we're up there, a dude was coming down in his ATV. I talked to him. I was like, oh, you just come through Mosquito Pass on the other side? He's like, no. He's like, I came up this way, and he's gonna turn around and come back again. He goes, I couldn't make it through. It was impassable. So once he told me that it was impassable, I realized it's a lost cause. We're not gonna make it through. If he can't make it through an ATV, I'm not making it through with a truck. It's just not gonna happen. So we decided to hang out for a little bit. We ended up doing some drone footage and doing some had lunch, kind of hung out and ate and picnicked and just took our time, whatever, right? It was pretty out. It was just a beautiful area, so we just decided to kind of hang out for a little bit and explore. So that's what we did. My wife went rock hunting, whatever, so yeah, you just make the best of the situation as it comes up. Engineer Pass, that was a disappointment, man. I really, really wanted to do Engineer Pass. When I did the Trans-American Trail with my dad last time, we you have the option of taking different passes when you go through the Continental Divide, or Trans-American Trail rather, and we chose to do Black Bear Pass, which I don't regret. Just Black Bear Pass is a kick in the pants to do. It was a great time. We had fun. Um, you know, I would do it again, 110%, do it again, right? I love doing Black Bear Pass. Um, but, we hit parts of Engineer Pass when we did it, the Trans-American Trail. So I never have gotten an opportunity to do it in its entirety. So that's one trail that I really wanted to do and I was looking forward to doing. When I started researching this one, I was like, oh, cool, we get to go to the Engineer Pass again. So I get to do it now, right? It was snowed in, I couldn't make it through. So I was disappointed with that, but, it is what it is. It just means I got to go back out there again and do it, right? So that's what we're going to do. Go back out and do it. But it's all cool. No regrets, right? No regrets. The irony, the irony behind all that is, like I said before, right? We finished the trail on June 22nd. As we finished the trail, we hit the Canadian border. We're coming down and we're going to South Dakota. They go to Mount Rushmore and go to the Badlands. And I get a message across my phone. I get pinged, and I guess it knew my location where I was, because you have location on whatever. I don't know if it's coincidence or what, but I got a message across my phone that said Engineer Pass is now open June 22nd, and it was June 22nd. So I was kind of like, man, did I turn around and go back? No, of course not. But because we're already heading another direction. But with that being said, if you're trying to do that pass, that might be a good time frame to look at doing is around June 22nd, because that's when it opened, when we went through or attempted to go through but couldn't, but end up opening up on June 22nd, right? So just keep that in mind. You plot that on your calendar or whatever you're going to do, right? Right. So next one I want to touch on a little bit is going back to maps a little bit and just talking about how to properly set your map up or what's important to you on your map. When you're looking at your maps for Gaia or for any of those types of overlanding maps, just make sure you set them up the way you want to see it, because there's different settings in there that allows you to see different types of terrain or view them differently. Me personally, I chose to set mine up to where I see public land, trails, and public land trails. I think it's really two biggest ones, right, that I had on mine. And I did that because for camping purposes, you're camping on public land, BLM, right? So you want to make sure you know where you are in that area. And then trails, because a lot of these roads are on forestry roads, and you want to make sure that you can see alternate routes on forestry roads, because fire roads are listed on there, on those. When you set it up that way, you get fire roads and logging roads and utility roads. So that's why I set it up that way. And then in addition to that, I also laid it out to where I can see the original CDT trail for the hikers. So I knew where I was along that trail at all times, which was also helpful. It came in handy for just find alternate routes. Like, we talk about, going up to Silverton area. I can see that, the trail that they wanted to take me on originally goes out and it comes back across through Silverton. I needed gas. I wasn't going to go out and come back again. I wanted a direct route. By laying my Gaia map out the way I did, I was able to see a direct route that went straight up to Silverton instead of going out and around and coming through Silverton. Either way, I was going through Silverton, right? So I just figured a more direct route's better. And the more direct route was actually on the Continental Divide Trail, vice veering off of it and coming back to it again. So I think my route stayed more true to the Continental Divide Trail. I don't know what I missed out on, and I really don't care, to be honest with you, because I don't think there's anything out there except for more of what we already went through. So so there's that, right? So I wanted the more direct route, and I took it. And that route brought me right into a gas station. So it was a win-win for me, right? So that's why I did that. That's why I had my Gaia map set up the way I did. So just make sure you set it up the way you want to see it, that benefits you in your driving style, right? Is that's essentially what's going to help you out in the long run. That really kind of wraps up everything for the Continental Divide Trail and what we did and how we did it. I know, a lot of people, if they ask you as well, but a lot of people, I talk about my journeys and things, and people ask, well, why do you do it? Like what do you get out of it? What's it mean to you? Why, don't you like being on the road that long? Isn't it like hard, or like don't you get tired of it or whatever? Um, the short answer to that really is, we all have our personal, things that we go through in life, right? And for me, right, retired military, and there's certain things that I battle, right, on a daily basis. So being able to do these types of trips helps me to recalibrate and come back into society and function as good as I can, right? So there's that. If you're battling, mental health issues or going through certain things, it's important to get your help, right? Go seek treatment, go get help where you can. But with that, doing these types of trips also helps. It helps clear your head. It helps get your mind right again. It kind of grounds you because you get you back out to Mother Nature, and for me, that's what it's about, right? That's why I do it. It gets me back out there. It gets me into nature, and it helps me to just again recalibrate. So, if you're if you're looking for something to do, and you're battling your demons, look, man, I feel you. There's a lot of us that are battling things. Find an outlet. Find help and find an outlet. Those are two most important things: find help and find an outlet. Whatever that might be. Some people like to do music. Some people, whatever. I like doing this. This is what I like to do. I like to camp, I like to hike, and I like to drive my truck. So it helps me with my head, right? So that's why I do it. Other than that, man, look, everybody out there, stay safe, treat the trails right, treat them with respect, and if you have any questions, drop me a line. I'll answer what I can, the best I can, and that's about it out there. Again, be well, everyone. Stay safe.